Welcome back to the Card Pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we're looking at part 2 of the hidden gems that we are digging up in Time Spiral.
Indeed. Again, this is part 2. We did part 1 of our hidden gems, numbers 10 through 6 last time. So this time we're going to do 5 all the way to number 1.
And quick disclosure, disclaimer, whatever word you want to use that begins with a D, not that one. We couldn't choose the cards that were a part of the 10 most expensive in this set. So these are the ones that meet the ladder and the ones that we like for whatever reason that we like them for.
Yeah, so I think you should start off, Stu.
All right, so at number 5, we will be looking at a card called Scrib Ranger, which took me a while to learn how to read the first word. But Scrib Ranger is a creature with a 1/1 body. It is a fairy that costs 2 mana, 1 generic, in a forest. And this is a creature with flash, which means you can play it at any time you would like. Also, it has flying and protection from blue. But if that wasn't enough for you, it also has 1 additional effect. You can go ahead and return a forest you control to its owner's hand. Untap target creature, and you can only play this ability once per turn. So this card is really, really good in mono green or any deck that's using green that has a good forest count in it, just for the fact that you get to go ahead and untap a creature. This is really good to tag team with something like Rise the Redeemed or any creature that has a tap effect that you want to go ahead and use. Rune of Hidden Realms is one that could also fall into that category as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this goes into just any green deck because, you know, bouncing a land to give something sort of vigilance, I mean, whatever. I don't really find that exciting. However, when you combine it, like you said, with tap abilities like Rune, Prime Speaker Vanifar, Gisan the Wanderer Bard, any one of those can make for extremely powerful combinations. And note that it says once per turn. It doesn't say, you know, during just your turn that you can do this. So as long as you just use it once, you could use it every time for every turn that goes around the table. That's potentially very good.
It is very good, especially that we are seeing a greater surplus in landfall. You can go ahead and make it so that if you were to use that on every other player's turn, you wouldn't be at the deficit of land that they would. This card is really great. One, for the fact that it can be flashed in. They won't see it coming, and for the ability to go ahead and just keep using this over and over and over again. Also, it is potentially a really good chump blocker just for having the protection and the flying. I've seen this actually do a lot of work at just making it so that a player doesn't lose just because some sort of big blue flyer is coming at them, and it's like, honestly, for what it does, it is a lot.
Does a lot of work for 1 card, and for only 2 mana, that is a winner.
And an uncommon, this really should be a rare.
Yeah, and if you hadn't chosen this for your list, I would have chosen it for mine. So I'm glad you did.
And this is pretty much the cousin to Wirewood Symbiote, or if you've seen the Venom movie, Symbiote.
Yeah, right. Or Quirion Ranger is an very old version of the same card.
There's 3 of them that are pretty much the ones that are the best, that are only ones that really do this so well in green. And honestly, they really get the job done.
Yeah, a lot of work. Going on to my number 5, speaking of things that do a lot of work, I have Harmonic Silver on my list. So this card is one of the multicolor sliver cycle. It is 1 mana and a green and white. 1/1 that says all slivers have, when this creature comes into play, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So, a very simple card, basically for the pretty much same price, makes all of your slivers, including this one, into an aura shards when they enter the battlefield. And this is one of the only slivers that I would consider playing outside of a slivers deck just because of how good that ability is. Reclamation Sage is a standard for every deck that has green in it.
Sure.
I would argue for any deck that has Selesnya colors, you should at least consider playing this card for the exact same reason.
Yeah, it pretty much is that. If you have a handful of changelings in there as well, it also makes it so that the chance of running this up a little higher is...
Right, even if you have just 1 changeling or 1 other card in your deck
or
that
your
can
commander
use with this, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's really, like I said, one of the most powerful slivers. Having this kind of permanent hate on a creature is very good. Even though this may be slightly weaker than something like a Reclamation Sage or an Aura Shards, I still consider running it almost every time I'm building something in these colors.
And you're probably asking, why would you do that? You can go ahead, you can balance flicker this creature a whole bunch of times to get this effect over and over again, or even just getting it as a one-shot effect is still pretty good.
Yeah, and you never know what might come up to give you another thing that can, be triggered by this card, so you never know.
The one thing to note about this one is that it isn't a May effect. Something has to be destroyed, so if you go ahead and you get this kind of crazy effect off, you wiped everyone else's else's artifacts and enchantments off, and then you play another sliver, we'll say in this example, and you have stuff, you'll have to start eating your own away off
That's
the board.
a good point, yeah.
But that rarely is a problem, and also you might have at least 1 or 2 indestructible artifacts, which you can always just target with that and you'll be fine.
Right.
But that's just one thing to note before you just go ahead and think of like, oh, there's no downside. That's the only slight downside you would see with this card.
Agreed. Overall, very cool, though.
Very cool. Now, number 4, I'm not a blue player, but you gotta mention this card.
Okay.
So at my number 4, we have a card called Brine Elemental. Now, this is a card that does make a big splash. We'll do it one more time. Yes. It is an elemental creature with a 5/4 body that costs 6 mana, 4 generic and double blue. And it is a morph creature, which I'll go into in a second. But when this creature is turned face up, each opponent skips his or her untap step. And you might be wondering, well, how does that even happen? Well, with Morph, you can go ahead and play this card face down for 3 generic mana, and it's just viewed as a 2/2 creature. However, you can go ahead and play the Morph cost at any time, and it will flip off. And now the Morph cost in this case is 7 mana, 5 generic and double blue. So this was a lot to take in, but let that digest for a second. This is a creature that makes it so that your opponents skip their next untap step. This isn't just on lands, this isn't just on artifacts. This is everything is stuck down in its position. It's a Frost Titan on a global scale.
Yeah.
That right there is something your opponents at instant speed will not be able to handle.
Yeah, as somebody who often plays against things like, Vorinclex that punish you for tapping out and then just make you unable to use your resources on the following turn, it's awful to have to play against something like this. And the thing that makes this especially good is how well it works in multiplayer Magic. It says each opponent skips. It's not just target opponent, it's each. That's what makes this a huge problem. And when you combo this with Vesuvan Shapeshifter, which is a clone that can flip itself face up, face down, face up, face down all the time. It creates a lock that was actually the dreaded Pickles combo. Wow, that was like the bane of Standard.
You gotta love that.
Existed.
And anyone who would ever want an alternate art like Rick and Morty thing, this would be the Pickle Rick.
It absolutely
card
would
of
be.
Magic.
Yes. And if you can assemble the right combinations, it can still absolutely be a threat in Commander. There's maybe a few hoops to jump through, but locking down people from untapping is brutal.
Totally brutal. And also the fact is that you can go ahead, so you know how we usually see like the double blue mana being the infamous, counterspell, don't tempt me? 7 mana in Commander is the infamous Cyclonic Rift, don't tempt me. This is the other route if doing that. Like, all right, I have 7 mana open, I have a 2/2 face down. At the end of the player before your turn, flip this.
Yeah.
Everyone else will be hating it. It's almost like an extra turn spell.
It is, yeah.
And it's just, for what it does, so good. If you haven't played with it, don't, but also avoid having it played on you as well. But it is just a card to know. And for an uncommon, this kind of effect, it is powerful.
Very powerful.
So, I have nothing more to say about this,
All
guys.
right, well, yeah. Moving right along to my number 4 on this list. We're going to stay in blue for this. And it's similarly annoying cards. Number 4 for me is Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir. So this is the original legendary Teferi. Should have been a Planeswalker, technically, but whatever.
Well, he later became...
Yes, but story-wise, should have been at this point if they had Planeswalker cards. But anyway, this is a human wizard legendary creature. Costs 5 mana to play, triple blue in that mana cost. 3/4 with flash, meaning you can play it at any time. Creature cards you own that aren't in play also have flash, and each opponent can play spells only at any time he or she could play a sorcery. So again, this is the original version of Teferi. So all your creatures have flash and can be played at instant speed. That's great. That's a huge advantage.
Huge.
Flashing in blockers to stop attacks that are coming in, using abilities or playing creatures on other people's turns to give them haste, to get abilities whenever you want. That's all really cool. But the thing that makes this even better and really, really annoying is the fact that your opponents can only play at sorcery speed.
Yes.
That means not only is there no counter spells from anyone else going to stop your stuff, but they just can't do anything basically on your turn.
They can't use the stack in the way that they would want to with certain things. Now again, they could use triggered abilities and stuff like that, sure. But with the casting using the stack is usually the way it works, especially when you see a storm deck or something like that. That's where it goes in super heavy. If they're trying to do some sort of degenerate combo, that's where it matters as well.
And we just recently got out of a standard format where the new Planeswalker version of Teferi had this exact same ability and just destroyed the format single-handedly.
It's such a good card, and honestly, this is one of the ones I was going to use for an example, as in your Flash Tutor from Part 1. However, I made sure I didn't spoil this card.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But this is a great card just to go ahead and take it so that you get control of the field. Now, Prophet of Crucifix. I loved that card. I used that card. It was pretty much a card that should be in every deck that was in Simic. You can still go ahead and make a pseudo Prophet of Crucifix.
You can, yeah.
Let's take our ingredients. Let's use Teferi right here and Seedborn Muse. It's almost the same effect.
Yeah.
They are pretty much the parents of Prophet of Crucifix. It is their love child. And being able to go ahead, untap everything, and cast out creatures every player's turn is the same as getting extra turns.
Yeah.
And it is just, for what this card does for 5 mana, this should be a Mythic.
It absolutely should be, and probably would have been if they had Mythic rarities back then.
And I think later there was from the Vault version, which brought it up to Mythic to kind of step that point in of how powerful it is. But this card does not need to be the commander. This is definitely a card to put in the 99.
It could be either, really. I mean, if you just want a generically good blue deck, sure, make him your commander.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you could do that.
You want everyone to hate you, but yeah.
Yeah, it would be an anti-meta deck, which, again, those shine.
Yeah.
But moving on to my number 3, if you don't mind me.
Go ahead.
My number 3 here is a card called Demonic Collusion. Well, the splash was a little early, but it's all good. Now, Demonic Collusion here is a sorcery that is in black. It costs 5 mana, 3 generic, and double black. It reads, search your library for a card and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. But it also has the additional buyback effect, which costs an addition of discarding 2 cards. Now, what buyback is after you go ahead and you play the card, you would pay the buyback cost. In this case, it's just discarding 2 cards, and then Demonic Collusion would in turn go to your hand after the whole thing resolves, as opposed to going to the graveyard. This is a really good recurable tutor for the fact that you can go ahead and keep using it provided you still have cards in your hand. And you could even combo this thing out by going ahead, paying 5 mana, tutor for a card, then discard 2 cards and play the card again and discard the thing that you want to the grave.
Exactly.
It's like a fast way of building your grave, especially in a black Reanimator deck.
Yeah, I'm usually unless they're really good, I'm usually not a huge fan of just one-shot tutors. I mean, look,
tutors are powerful.
Yes,
Kyle.
they absolutely are. But I would almost rather have something that does something immediately. But however, this is an exception to that rule. This is not just a one-shot card. You can use this potentially multiple times, even for 5 mana, which is a little bit expensive for a tutor. It's still really, really powerful for what it does.
It's a really good budget one, because typically for what we've seen for tutors, right? Like, there's Demonic Tutor, which is the infamous one. It's 2 mana, and it's a much more expensive card. But we've been seeing more like a Diabolic Tutor or like a Mastermind's Acquisition, which costs 4 mana. So for that 1 extra mana, being able to potentially keep this card, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. And yeah, this is basically, you get to play the best card from your hand with buyback over and over again. Cards with buyback have historically been really good.
Oh yeah.
So it's not an effect that you were going to see making a reappearance anytime soon, probably. So the ones that exist are that much better.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Shockingly, I will agree with that.
All right.
All right, so your number 3, Kyle. What do you got coming?
Yes, well, my number 3 here, moving on, is going to be Squall Line, going to green here for this one. And it's going to make quite a splash, I think. So this is an X spell and an instant.
Copy my line right there.
And double green. So Squall Line deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player. This is a deceptively simple card, but one that I think that a lot of people, too many really, overlook for how powerful it is. I'm usually not all about the whole anti-flying thing in green. Like, sure, flying can be a problem for green-based decks, but cards that specifically hate on creatures with flying, whatever, they're not really that great most of the time.
See, that's where you and I will always differ, because, so to the viewers who don't know this, first deck Kyle really had was Asperia, and it was the one that only cared about flying creatures. Me having some ragtag thrown together 5-color Progenitus deck, only saw flying creatures, so I had a great hatred to them coming early. So cards like these, I took a special notice of.
That's
so
just-
you
yeah.
don't get it. I get
guess
it.
not. But normally I don't pay too much attention to those, but then there's the each player part of it added on to this.
And that is what makes this
yeah,
better.
exactly. This is, so for green, the best color at ramping, this is green fireball. That's what it is for every player. This is green fireball. How is that not good?
It's, honestly, I didn't view it that way, and that is pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, well, you do hit yourself, though. So you got to be careful.
And that's what I was going to say.
You got to be very careful about how you use this. However, this has easily the opportunity to win you games if you are just ahead in life compared to everyone else.
Yeah, if you have the mana to plug into this, sure. And I mean, if you're using a deck like Omnath or even like Krufix, the commander
and you
itself,
don't want to just be dependent on big dumb combat damage swings to win the game. Save up your mana, play this when people least expect it. It is instant after all, and just win the game with a fireball out of nowhere.
Well, this also doesn't have to be just mono green. This would be something in Gruul, which is always trying to go ahead and use red spells to kind of like burn away at their opponent's life and stuff like that. So this would be a good tag team, going ahead and doing a little chip damage, big damage, and then like dropping the world on them.
And this card is so under the radar that people will never see it coming.
Yeah.
It's won me quite a few games in the past. So.
And you turn your nose up to green. Well,
not always.
Actually, this is funny because I turn my nose up to blue, and I'm only talking about blue cards this time. So moving to my number two, Stu's number two.
All right.
Is a card called Ixadron. Oop, we'll get him up here real fast. All right, there we go. Now this is a creature, an illusion creature that costs 5 mana, 3 generic, and double blue. As Ixadron comes into play, turn all non-token creatures in play that are face up, face down. They then become 2/2 creatures. In addition, this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of face down creatures in play. So this can be potentially a 0/0. However, this is something that is a little bit scarier than a board wipe.
Yes.
Because this goes ahead and pretty much is like Blue's version of humility. We go ahead, we strip all effects, all abilities, all stats from all creatures, and they just become 2/2 nothings.
Yeah.
Your commander is out of the game pretty much. It's almost like it's been Darksteel Mutation or something else like that.
Yeah.
It just can't do anything, and this guy is just a powerhouse stomping around.
With the manifest ability too, you're able to flip things up again. But with
Sure.
this, it doesn't give your guys more for manifest or anything. It's
No.
just if they're down, and nobody's flipping them back up again.
That is a great point to note. Unless the creature already has Morph or Manifest or Super Megamorph, I think it is, or
Yeah,
Supermorph,
Megamorph, yeah.
Those are the only 3 times that the creatures will be able to flip back over, unless they get exiled or blinked out or something like that, where they'll leave and then re-enter. That will face them back up.
This is one of those cards that's going to make all your friends hate you, but it is really great. And like the fact that it gets as big as however many face-down creatures are in play is also a beat stick of a size that Blue rarely ever gets access to.
Yeah.
This is the bane of many a casual table, I think, because there are basically no ways to fight back against this once it's already been done.
Well, the thing is that you have to go ahead and get rid of all face-down creatures. However, you put all that work into a field, you don't want to do that.
No.
And actually the thing is like some people would want to get their commander back. People won't block that. I'll take the 2 damage. It's, I don't believe, commander damage at that point.
No, and it wouldn't be.
So at that point, it's like, okay, you deal with this problem. You need to destroy your own creature if you want to play it, and that's like the biggest insult to injury you could do to a player.
And imagine if you can start blinking this, then just nobody's going to have a good time.
Yeah, you just constantly stay on top of the field, and it works out pretty well. Now, if you are thinking something like Brago or a Rune, the only problem is that the commander would then be flipped back down. So you have to be clever in how you'd want to use that.
Yes. But if you just do simple targeted abilities, then it's pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, it depends on how you want to build the deck, in all honesty. But what card do you have that tops this?
Right. Well, moving right along to my number 2 here, we're going to go to a white card, actually, called Return to Dust.
I know this
is
card.
kind of a similar theme to my earlier Harmonic Silver pick. So this is a 4-mana white instant. Remove target artifact or enchantment from the game. If you played this spell during your main phase, you may remove up to one other target artifact or enchantment from the game. So, like we said, artifact and enchantment hate is pretty good. Of course, it's better the more versatile it is. And honestly, for white, this is one of the better options you have for spot removal like that.
Yes, if you're in mono white, sure.
Yeah, it's at instant speed. Exiles, not destroys, so exiles permanently getting rid of any artifact or enchantment you want. However, you can also just play it as a sorcery during your own turn and get rid of 2 things for the price of 1, which either way is really great.
Yeah, being able to make it pseudo-modal is pretty nice. Now this is a card, again, kind of like Crows and Grip. We've seen it played way more in earlier EDH. However, as the game has progressed and evolved in certain things, it's kind of like, again, faded into dust a little bit. It's not a bad card by any means like that. It's just one that's kind of forgotten at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, again, I'd rather play a Generous Gift over this most of the time.
Sure.
Heck, I'd probably rather play an Oblation over this most of the time.
Or a Disenchant, even.
I don't know about that. This might be better than that. But this is my reason I bring this up is because this is one that I always think about, if not actually include in a deck, just because it is that good.
Yeah, it's a little hefty, but again, it's not a 1-for-1. It's a 2-for-1, and it's
Yeah.
not hitting the grave, it's getting exiled.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there's ever been a time when I played this not on my own turn. Seriously.
and that's the thing it kind of forces you to do. However, because it almost feels bad not playing it on your turn.
Exactly, it does.
But it isn't, though, which is actually the thing. It's still decent. It's still pretty decent.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward, but I think very cool, very underrated and powerful.
Yeah, I agree. It's a decent budget option, at least.
Yes, definitely.
So moving on to my number 1
All right,
card
what's
here.
your number 1?
My number 1 is a card I love playing against pretty much anyone if I get the chance. It's called Sudden Spoiling.
Ugh, yeah.
And this is a card that does make a splash. This is an instant that costs 3 mana, 1 generic and double black. Creatures target player controls become 0/2s and lose all abilities until the end of the turn.
This card is the worst.
But if it wasn't enough, that effect right there, it has Split Second. Yes, and that right there is the selling point on this card.
Yes, it
Pretty
is.
much you go ahead and you neuter a person's field, not by actually removing the stuff, by actually transforming it into something that is pretty much very easy to handle.
Exactly.
Somebody goes ahead, they play, they attack, they use some sort of combo thing. All right, you're like, all right, I will just play Sudden Spoiling. This all falls apart. Kyle actually was playing me last week.
Yeah,
actually, I don't remember the commander you're using. It makes indestructible for all your creatures. It's like a pseudo Avacyn.
Yeah, I'm a Safara, yeah.
Safara. He's using Safara, and I go and he has like Spirit Bonds out, so we can go ahead and give Safara indestructibility. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll play Damnation. All right. He's like, all right, well, I'll just make it so everything's indestructible, and I'll play Sudden Spoiling. He can't go ahead and make it so his creature goes ahead and gets indestructible again.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing can happen. Nothing can go off. All the things are just going to go ahead and die. And that is the true beauty and simplicity of this thing.
Yeah, especially playing this in the middle of combat. If somebody's swinging at you with a bunch of creatures,
Or any person.
you can then just make them small, and you can just chump block them with no problem at all, making your awesome Blightsteel Colossus into a 0/2 that can easily die is pretty great.
It just pretty much makes those cardboard castles just washed away with a hose. And honestly, it's a card you really don't see that many players use, actually.
No, it's really good, too.
It's honestly a very solid Plan B card to be like, all right, I might lose the game. Let me hold on to this for later, and I can do that. You could even go ahead and save a player if you truly had to.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd have to be really, really good at making it like a sound argument. But this can stop something like a Machias, that whole Triskelion-Machias combo right there. They go ahead and, all right, I'll
for
all
a
this
turn
stuff
at
out.
least, but yeah.
Well, no. Let's say like Machias goes ahead, the effect's going to go off, right? He's going to do the undead thing. All right, Triskelion targets itself with the final thing. I'll remove the effect for make it so that the creature will come back undying. The undying would happen, Triskellion's done.
That's true.
And then just get to deal with Machias that turn. So you can go ahead and just stop. And I've even used this on a Narset. The Narset player goes ahead and they go to combat. I'll play Sudden Spoiling. It's got to be before they declare the attack, regrettably, but it stops the problem. And
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
what
it
this
does.
does.
Very powerful card, for sure.
Thank you, Kyle. So you're number 1. Is it better?
I think so, just because everybody knows what this card is. So number 1 on my list.
That does
is
not
going
mean the
to
card
be-
is better.
Well, it's pretty much agreed, I think. This is number 1 on my list, and it's going to be Dread Return.
You know, you're
Very much something.
We're
going to
have to do a poll now to see if that's the case.
I mean, come on. I really don't think you can argue this card. It's a 4-mana black sorcery. Return target creature from your graveyard to play. It also has Flashback, the ability that we discussed earlier in the last video, being able to cast itself again from the graveyard 1 time and then exile it. The Flashback cost not being a mana cost in this case, but simply sacrifice 3 creatures. So Dread Return is the boogeyman of many, many formats.
It's a strong card.
It is very strong. And, 4 mana to bring a creature back from your own graveyard, that's a pretty, it's pretty middling baseline sort of power on a card. However, the flashback is what makes the card. The reason this card is so good is every deck that uses any kind of like self-milling strategy, dredge decks, in Commander we got things like Sidisi and other commanders that like to, mill
Sir
your own
Conrad
deck.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you can just toss this into your graveyard at any time for whatever random value effect you want, or mill it, you don't care. And then it's just ready to come back out of the graveyard at any time and deliver some kind of game-winning blow, which is more than likely what's going to happen for the low cost of sacrificing 3 creatures.
Yes, I agree. All right, so I agree with you with that. It is a strong card. It has the ability to go ahead and do shenanigans.
Yes.
But you're not even touching one of the greatest shenanigans that it can do. Let's say you go ahead, you need a tutor, like a Runescarred Demon, all right? You play this card, you get Runescarred Demon back from the grave, you get something to your hand, right? Then you go ahead and you play the card again, you'll lose the Runescarred Demon and get something else out there. It's kind of like using Sun Titan to get Lightning Greaves.
Yeah.
Equipping it to Sun Titan and getting the attack and then getting the other trigger. You can go ahead and combo this card with itself to make the sort of board state that you want to have happen.
And I think, honestly, just because of how well known this is, you gotta give me this. This is the best gem in the set, hands down.
I don't think it's a gem. I think it's like a. It's on the board of awards.
I wouldn't call it "quote unquote" hidden gem, but it is like for a lower than $1 card. Like, come on, you just can't beat this. Really.
All right, we will do a poll.
All right.
Is Sudden Spoiling or Dread Returner a better card? So vote Team Stu, Team Kyle. And
let us
we'll
know.
see what the results are. And actually, we gotta start doing something if something happens with polls. We gotta get more people to vote for them. We'll see what actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
But that is
know those results.
Yeah. We'll see exactly how wrong you truly are. But until then, that is going to be the end of this. Whoa, there's the card again.
Yeah, see? It's good. Yeah, see,
yeah,
it's
it's haunting. Good. It's haunting us now at this point. It is a Dread Return. That is the end of this episode. We're going to go on to the next one, which will be the money cards from the set. These are the ones that we were not allowed to choose from, so you get kind of an idea of how truly powerful this set was.
Indeed. And until then, you can check us out on social media. We're on Reddit. We have tapped out deck lists galore. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can email us too, and you can find them all at the handle TheCardPool.
Yep, and you can find us on our own Reddit page, TheCardPool as well. That's where you get more of our updates, as opposed to all across Reddit itself. And we are also associated with TCG Player. You can find the link down in the description below, but pretty much what that means is right before you go ahead and you shop, hit the close the shopping cart button out. I can't talk. Pretty much right before you go ahead and you purchase your cards, click on the link, and it lets them know that you like our channel, and for them to take note, they support us in return, and it is a big help towards
We
the
always
channel.
appreciate it.
So until then, he's Kyle.
And he's Stu.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool. Gotta keep you on your toes.
Yeah, fun changing it up a little bit sometimes.
Dude, you gotta love that horn. It's just so much fun.